Hello, everyone. You're listening to the Socially Desi Show, the podcast that motivates you to live, create, and inspire. If this is your first time here, welcome. On our show, we discuss tips and strategies with our guest speakers on how to tackle problems related to personal growth, mental health, relationships, entrepreneurship, and health and fitness. So hit that subscribe button and go check out our website at sociallydesi.com for more of such content. Today, I'm joined by Mr. Sudheen. He is a serial entrepreneur and the founder of Crystal Hues Limited. Hello, Mr. Sudheen. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Anurag.
It's a pleasure to be hosting you on the show today, Mr. Sudheen. So, to our audience who are not aware about you, why don't you tell us about your professional journey so far?
I'm just a regular next door guy that you find in your neighborhood. So I did my graduation in commerce, and I, of course, did a small advanced diploma in computers, and of course, pursued my languages interest in French. Now, to find a job that I can use all these three were extremely difficult in those days.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I was able to find something that that kept me interested because one of these components were used in my professional journey, but not all three of them.
Mm-hmm.
And subsequently, of course, I worked in a company called Ranbaxy.
Okay.
And that's where I realized that there's a lot of scope for Indian companies to expand internationally. And the biggest hurdle that the Indian companies had to expand internationally was the lack of availability of reaching and communicating to these international markets, which were largely language locked.
Right.
So large populations of the world is, unlike we as Indians, we believe that English is the global language, but that's so far from true. English is not at all a language if you need to do business internationally. Of course, to English-speaking market, yes, it is. But if it is not an English-speaking market that you want to, explore, then you need to have your communications, all of that, including your product catalogs, your website, your marketing collaterals. Everything has to be in that local language of that country.
So true.
So that's something that we as Indians are never aware about, or we are very little aware, even if we are. And that was one of my biggest discovery when I worked in Ranbaxy.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, I said, okay, let me start my journey and specifically focusing on this area. So that's how I started my journey, helping companies set up or explore international markets. And actually, to be honest, it's not just international market. Even in India, which is again a very language locked population. You go from one region to the other region, it's again a language locked population.
So true.
So if you have to really talk to them, sell them, or interact with them, unless you know the local language, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So even for businesses to do business in India, we were doing. We were actually the most relevant partner for them.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And Mr. Sudheen, when you talk about your journey, so you started Crystal Hues back in 1989, I suppose, right?
Yes. So that's when I established this as an organization.
Mm-hmm.
And then I incorporated that organization as a limited company in 1995.
Interesting. But then, apart from Crystal Hues, you have been a serial entrepreneur. You have worked and you have developed other businesses as well. And there's another business which is a media-based business. So why don't you tell us a bit about that as well?
My passion has always been to create opportunities for people to do something useful, something unique. So even within Crystal Hues, we have always been mostly pioneering a lot of new initiatives.
Hmm.
And that's why you will see that Crystal Use has been able to deliver an end-to-end service, right from creating content in any language to delivering that particular content across any technology, across any media. For all these, you need to have we have to take in people uh, and then train them in house,
Yeah.
make them proficient in using the technologies, and then move up. So a lot of innovation, even in Crystal use. Uh, when you ask about what I did subsequently, this passion of creating new opportunities or something new in terms of innovation, uh, I actually faced this challenge that most of the uh, school students they are uh, not really aware about their surroundings, not at all aware about what's happening around them.
Hmm.
And when you ask them what's happening, I mean, generally about their awareness about local awareness or local happenings, they come up as absolutely ignorant.
Hmm.
The main reason is that no media really talks to them. There's no media for school students. So, and their schools, their whole universe is within the school or at home, and that's about it. There's nothing else beyond the school or at home,
Right.
whatever they are exposed to.
Hmm.
And this is also true for the whole school community as such.
Hmm.
So that's when we thought we should have a media that purely talks to school community, which means students,
Hmm.
parents, and then the school faculties and the other partners who work with school.
Hmm.
And curating information, curating news, curating activities and events that's purely targeted at a school community.
Interesting.
I mean, you of course have larger search engines which give all kinds of information, but they're not really curated. You don't know
Yeah.
which one is
Yeah.
ideal, relevant for you. So that was one challenge that most of the parents and students had. And of course, you always have this challenge of inappropriate content,
Yeah.
being available to students
Hmm.
of that age. So that was also biggest challenge of that the school students were facing. I mean, that parents were also facing. So this is what we try to address, and the another problem was, let's say, for example, if a student wants to explore
Hmm.
anything beyond curriculum, again there is no I mean, where does he go to,
Yeah.
which place he goes to look at, pursue his interest. Let's say, for example, I want to learn origami art.
Hmm.
I don't know where to go to.
Yeah.
So what we also did was we wanted to create an ecosystem in which the school students are able to pursue their interest, at least get to know about all the possibilities, explore their interest. So we created an engagement ecosystem also around this. So our intention was to create um, uh, a platform which helped them, uh, generate awareness in them, and then also help them to uh, pursue their interests
Hmm.
in terms of whatever programs or skill sets they would like to explore um, based on their interest. So
Interesting. Yeah.
both as a media and an engagement ecosystem.
Hmm. No, very interesting, because one business you are helping businesses to talk to the rest of the world, and the other business is about, the whole education ecosystem talking to the app and talking to each other. That's very interesting. So, I mean, I would definitely love to explore more of Fair Gaze. and talk to you more about that on a later episode for sure. So, Mr. Sudheen, coming back to our main topic of the day, which is about how entrepreneurs, how businesses can actually take leverage, take advantage of localization, localizing their content, their services in the native language of a particular region. And like you rightly said, English is, of course, if you're targeting an English speaking audience, then of course English works. But again, we all know that English is not the largest spoken language in the world. It comes after French and Spanish. Mr. Sudheen, my question to you is, how can entrepreneurs, how can businesses take real advantage of localization?
So, well, you actually caught the most important word in this whole journey of mine, the word called localization.
Hmm.
Now, when I started the business, there was this word didn't exist actually. So the whole idea here was whenever you want to communicate or uh, a message to us, an audience which doesn't speak your language, you need to localize it in the language of the person you're trying to talk to.
Yeah.
And when the word specifically localization has come to nowadays mean use of technology to help or facilitate this communication in a different language. So localization is nothing but a combination of language expertise and technology expertise,
Hmm.
um, so that you are able to talk in any language and across any medium of communication. It can be your website, it can be through your brochures, it can be through your app.
Mm-hmm.
So in any medium that you try and communicate to, the technology changes. For example, when you're printing a brochure, the technology is different. When you're creating an app or communicating through an app, that technology is different. When you're trying to communicate through a website, that technology is again different,
Hmm.
which is again very different from any electronic media or TV or movies. So all these technologies are different, and you need to have the language capability or delivering these language across all these
Mm-hmm.
technologies. So that's what we specialize in.
Okay.
Now, if you look at a business typically at least would have their brochure and their website. This is something that you would normally find in practically every business now.
True. Yeah.
And so you need to have your brochure. Let's say, for example, a company is trying to export or trying to build the market in a French-speaking country. So you need to have your brochure in French, and then of course your website in French. These are basic requirements. And then if the company has some product, that product, the packaging, the user manual, all these things needs to be in French. And if that product is an IT product, or it's a software, then that software also needs to be in French language. So, meaning the user interface has to be in the local language. Uh, in this case, we are talking about is French. So it depends on the business, what the business is engaged in, and as per the business, whatever they are using to talk to the customer, that needs to happen in the local language.
Hmm. True. True that. So when it comes to, let's say, you gave an example of a company or an IT company which is operating in France, and they need to localize their content, their services, their offerings in that particular language. Now, what, like, of course, if that particular company has operations, let's say in Germany, and then again they have operations in Russia, or maybe, in Tokyo, Japan. So again, it becomes a huge hassle for these companies to make sure that all of their content, their services, their
Oh
brochures,
yes, oh yes,
it becomes a huge
oh
hassle.
yes.
How do they tackle that? How do they tackle this fundamental issue of catering to a global audience?
So there is always a product launch date or a market launch date that every company makes that much before they actually launch the product or launch themselves into that market. So localization is part and parcel of that. In fact, it begins even before that. Typically, the concept that we adopt is called internationalization.
Okay.
So unless your whole company is internationalized,
Mm-hmm.
you localization is actually a secondary stage. The first stage is internationalization.
Mm.
So unless you are internationalized in your plans, in your business plans, localization would then need to again go back to the stage one of internationalization.
Okay.
So when you said you wanted to launch across different markets, so that's part of the if your company is already internationalized, this would be part of your product launch plan,
Mm.
product
Mm.
launch campaign, or even your software or your product itself will already have localization uh, as built-in part of the plan to move into a different country. So, for example, when a company like which has multiple offices or multiple businesses across multiple locations, when they now launch a new product, it's a simultaneous launch, which means that the product is not only launched in their local language. Let's say, for example, in France, it will be launched in French language, but if it's an international company, it would have already built in. It would have already not only localized it in German language, Japanese language across all the market that they are going to launch,
Mm-hmm.
and they would launch it at one day on
Right.
the same day.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say is the whole product launch starts with the product planning itself. At the planning stage itself, the localization is taken forward. So it's not just local language that they work in; they also work with all the international languages at that same time.
True. True. And what happens, like, is it something like, this localization process, is it something which happens periodically? Is it something which happens regularly, or is it like a one time investment or efforts that an organization needs to put in?
This is largely every time there is a content or there is a product release happens in the local language. So if let's say for example, if you have a product launch in that you're making it today in February 2021, and you have an upgrade version happening, let's say in April 2021, you need to have. So it will be it depends purely on your product, on your business. So as frequent as your product changes or your business requirement happens, your localization would be equally frequent.
Okay, all right. So any
So
any
it is
content that
pure.
you create in one particular language then again needs to be localized for
Yes,
all regions and markets.
absolutely correct. Absolutely correct.
Hmm.
In fact, people have gone much ahead that they will create customer service centers in all the languages, and so all these things are had to build in. So your customer service center is not just only they cannot just remain with only the local language. You have to have the capability to support the customer support service in all the languages that you operate in.
Right, right. True that. And what are the best practices? Like, if you have to give a few best practices for business owners to make sure that they are prepared for this kind of an activity, what would those best practices be?
So the best way to make sure that your business is you know continues its growth internationally you need to have the capability to be able to localize it in whichever market that uh, you are operating in. And that means that you need to have a content management system, um, which actually is the backbone of any communication that you make.
Hmm.
So the moment you have any kind of content management system built into your system, built into your organization, you are able to uh, manage the communications, the content that you're creating in your local language, and then you can take business decisions whether you want it to be localized in a different language or not, or if you want it in a different language, which are those languages that you want to localize it. So it's easier to manage the content if you have a content management system in place.
Okay. And like for example, if you have a particular site, so how does the localization really work? Do you need to create different websites for that particular content? Like for example, in my case, let's say I have Socially Desi, and so
Mhm.
under sociallydesi.com we have two podcasts, right? One is an English podcast that we are on right now, the Socially Desi show.
Mhm.
The other podcast that we have is a Hindi podcast, which is a daily show, and it's called Namaste India. So like for
Mhm.
example, if I have these two podcasts, one is in Hindi and the other content is in English. So
Mhm.
within the same website, the localization happens on the like on the website level itself, or do I need to create different websites, or let's say you know uh, uh, whatever you call it, the front of what the user
Okay.
sees? Do you need to create two different architecture for that, or just one single architecture works?
Yeah. Typically, it depends on what is your. I mean, these are actually very much intertwined with your business plans. Let's say, for example, in your case, so it's very important to have the website itself clearly indicating that it is available in in multiple choice of languages. So it cannot be that one website, or that's in your case, the Hindi doesn't acknowledge that there is an English module, and the English doesn't acknowledge that there is a Hindi module to it.
Hmm.
So you need to, in both the modules, the the information should be there, just in case the user wants to explore the other's language content. That's one side of it. But typically, what businesses do is they have one single website, and then they give a Dropbox option for choosing the language, or they indicate that multiple languages are available by indicating either the language, some flags that
Hmm.
indicate
Hmm.
that this is available in English, this is available in German language, French language. So they indicate the flags. So that's one way of doing it. But this is again a challenge nowadays that most of the businesses are facing. Typically, if you go to a country like France, you will have all the website names ending with .fr,
Right.
you know, and likewise, for in India you have .in. So it indicates that this is a local website. So, and even from a business perspective, if you want your website to be, to be listed in the local search engine, let's say let's say if you want to appear in Google.fr, which is France Google, so you need to have a website which says .fr.
True.
So that, which means again, you need to have a local domain or a local website. But that's something that you can always link it with your main website, maybe your main .com website, and then when someone clicks on French, it goes to .fr, and then it displays the content. Technically, there would be not too much of challenges because the technologies have evolved a lot. Initially, of course, there were a lot of challenges because many languages wouldn't appear on your system unless you download certain fonts, and then only
Correct.
you can actually see those texts.
Yeah.
But the technologies have evolved, and you can actually see most of the languages on your screen. Uh, but then for Indian languages, we still have issues. Like it doesn't really appear the way uh, it should appear, and that's again a challenge. Even today, we have uh, Indian language fonts not really. Unless you do something at the back end and with the technology, it wouldn't really appear the way it should appear. I mean, of course, it is readable, but it's not correct. And that these are all issues of standardization across the world. And the Indian government is working a lot in trying to, ensure standardization across Indian languages. Like, for example, you cannot have an Indian language email ID today.
Right, right.
Whereas you can have a French email ID, you can have a any European language email ID you can have, but Indian language email ID doesn't work. So these are all challenges that happens with technologies, and even today we are having these technologies.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but typically, coming back to your question, the standard practice or it would be that you have your website in your Indian language, or let's say English,
Mm-hmm.
and then you give them the user the ability to click on a button, and then it changes to the other language that the user wants to change to. Now, this is all good enough if the languages are left to right.
Yeah.
But if the language is right to left, let's say for example Urdu or Arabic,
Mm-hmm.
then you need to really recreate the website in totality.
Correct. Yeah.
Because the image needs to be repositioned, the content needs to be repositioned. So there's a lot of work
True.
that goes back in the moment. If you're talking about a language that's right to left,
True.
then a lot of changes needs to happen.
For sure, for sure. No, I'm definitely 100% agree with what you are saying, that when it comes to making sure that your content is localized, your content is optimized for that particular region, for that particular audience, it's really important to look at the kind of domains that you're having, the kind of like for example this left to right issues with a few languages. You need to take them in consideration as well. So all these enhances the user experience, all of this enhances your brand perception towards that particular user. So that makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Mr. Sudheen. I guess those tips and tricks would have helped a lot of our listeners today on the Socially Desi show. There are a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs that keep listening to the Socially Desi show, and I'm sure they would really love to connect with you as well. So guys, if you would like to connect with Mr. Sudheen or his business Crystal Hues, definitely check out crystalhues.com. And if you want to ask any further questions to Mr. Sudheen, please reach out to us on sociallydesi@gmail.com, or you can go to sociallydesi.com/podcast to check out all the details about Mr. Sudheen and his businesses. We would be putting down the links in the show notes below as well. And with that, Mr. Sudheen, thank you so much for being on the show today. It has been an absolute pleasure to host you today.
Thank you very much, Anurag. It was wonderful to be talking to you, and I'll be glad to help anytime anybody reaches out to me. Thank you very much.
If you liked the episode, give it a big thumbs up, share it with your friends, and let's go viral. Remember, our weekly podcast features episodes on personal growth, mental health, relationships, business and entrepreneurship, and health and fitness. We would love to have Mr. Sudheen with us on the show again in the future to discuss more about the world of computers, websites, and localization. So, if you haven't yet done so, hit that subscribe button and go check out our website at sociallydesi.com. And as always, before I sign off, remember, life is black and white and everything in between.